What's going on, friends? Welcome to another episode of the Main Games podcast. With me, I have an old college classmate, Kat Moss, also another strength and conditioning coach. So, Kat, why don't you say hello to the people?
Hey everyone, how's it going?
They can't answer you back.
Well, just in case.
Kat, why don't you give a little bit of background as to who you are so everyone kind of knows what we're working with here?
Yeah, so as Jenny said, yeah, went to UNE, exercise science. I actually ended up getting my master's in exercise science. I went to Merrimack College and I did a fellowship at UMass Lowell. So I got to coach part-time, while also going to grad school, which is super cool. And then right after that, I was working at Colby College for the last year and a half. So full-time assistant strength and conditioning coach up in Waterville. And then I actually recently changed to working at Hawken Dynamics in Westbrook with force plates. We actually had them at Colby, which is how I got introduced to them. Worked for them kind of part time over the summer, and then transitioned full time just a few weeks ago.
How are you living in Portland?
So I live in Biddeford, so
Did you
general area.
commute from Biddeford all the way to Colby every day?
I did. So I was commuting a full like hour and a half, and I was actually living in Kennebunk up until about a month and a half ago. So it was 100 miles exactly. So I was commuting 100 miles each way, there and back. So it was like 3 hours of time that I now have in my life that I'm not commuting that far, which is kind of crazy. But I really liked it up there, so it was worth it. The snowy days, 2-hour drives wasn't, that's when I was like, am I doing this, like, is this what I should be doing right now? But it was worth it for me, so but I did, it was long.
What are you gonna do with your now 3 hours of extra time in your day?
Honestly, I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. My boyfriend and I were really big into rock climbing, and we kind of got out of it just because of the timing of everything. So probably try to pick that back up again. Honestly, looking for suggestions. So like I've say just started a few weeks ago, so I'm still kind of figuring out like, hey, like what do I want to do with my time? I'm probably gonna try to coach part time because I still love coaching, and like that's a big reason of why I'm in this industry, first of all, anyway. So I'm probably gonna try to pick up coaching part time somewhere.
When did you decide or realize that you wanted to become a coach?
Honestly, probably sophomore, junior year of college. Did an internship with Lindy Kelly and just kind of fell in love with it. I actually picked up powerlifting in my off season. I was a cross country runner in college, as some of you may know. Um, and I decided powerlifting my off season was a good idea. But I really kind of like fell in love with like the weight room, and thought it was kind of fun to get really strong. And then I changed my major to exercise science because I was originally an animal behavior major. So kind
That's
of just
weird. I also
growing.
was an animal behavior major.
No way, I didn't know that.
When did you switch your major?
Like right after freshman year, I was just really bored.
I
And
switched it the semester like the after the first semester of sophomore year.
oh no way. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think we had any classes together. You
Probably
probably
not because you did it right before, but
yeah. But yeah, same thing. I switched out right after because I was just like, not really my thing. And then I went abroad my sophomore year or spring of my sophomore year, so I didn't really start my junior year, but then did a full year-long internship uh junior year, I guess it was. I did the internship. But so between like junior, senior year, and then as I was just in the weight room more, kind of fell in love with that, like, the athlete coach interaction, the energy that's in the weight room, super high energy on your feet all the time. I kind of really like that. It's kind of like go, go, go all the time. So I kind of fell in love with that like mentality, lifestyle, and just went from that.
why did you choose to go to grad school instead of just going right into the like working?
Yeah, so actually, I was kind of unsure if I wanted to go to grad school or not. And I went down and did a site visit at Merrimack College with Mike Kamal. And after I went down and visit, he had contacted Lindy afterwards to be like, Kat should apply. Like, I think she would be a good fit. And so then within like a matter of a month, it was like sort of the end of the semester. So like February. And they're like, all right, you need to submit an application in like 2 weeks. And so I like really quickly did it, got accepted, and it was like, oh, I'm going to grad school. So it kind of happened within like a month of just kind of a split decision. But I think it was actually a really good decision because getting that fellowship experience, like the grad school piece, I think like luckily uni has such a good exercise science program. A lot of what I learned in grad school is kind of like an extra step of what I'd already learned, but the hands-on coaching experience was huge. Granted, I did it during the middle of COVID, so it was a little funky, had a lot of restrictions, but I think having that ability to kind of be in this like in between where like you're not fully responsible for a team, but also like I had like the women's lacrosse team, like everything I did with them was like on me, but it was a little bit like less stress of an environment to like learn a lot.
That's awesome. When you started to get towards the end of your fellowship, did you already want to come back to Maine or were you looking elsewhere?
Yeah, I really wanted to come back to Maine, and I actually was super unsure about going into the collegiate sector. Actually, I was kind of actually looking private, um, because out of COVID, obviously stuff was super messy. So I was kind of like, oh, maybe I don't want to be in college. But because of COVID, stuff was, not actually how it was in the college sector. So I was looking at private. I actually got hired by Equinox. I was actually going to go work for them, but I knew I didn't want to stay in Mass. So I moved up to Maine, got offered a position at Lowell, and was going to commute actually down to Lowell, and then got a position at Colby. And of course, I'm still in Maine, but then was commuting from like southern Maine all the way up to northern Maine, basically. But yeah, I wanted to come back to Maine. I love Maine. I've spent so much time here, like since even before I went to college. So knew we wanted to be here.
How was your time at Colby?
Awesome. Like I think it's kind of awkward transition right now because I like have left coaching right now. So like Colby was awesome. The athletes are awesome. Is pretty cool. I got to experience working with a lot of individuals I don't usually or probably wouldn't have access to. So I was working with like squash, crew, Nordic skiing, alpine skiing, some of those teams that like we didn't have at UNE. So it was kind of cool to like work with a bunch of different athletes that sports I probably have never been with.
I think it's really cool watching like especially you guys and the relationship you have with Hawken and how like you're able to use the force plates and stuff. At what capacity did you use technology in your programming and in your day-to-day training?
Yeah, so particularly the force plates, we almost every single one of our teams they jump every time they come into the weight room. So it's kind of like part of our program. We'd use that as more of a monitoring tool than a testing tool. There's an isometric test that you can use, which we use to measure like strength and power outputs, which we only did it with a few teams kind of as like benchmarks along the way. It takes a lot of time. So when you have 700 athletes, kind of what can we prioritize for who we want to test. We also use Tendo units. Didn't use those with all of our teams, again, because we only had like 10 of them. So our more advanced teams, we use them a few of those. Tech, we didn't necessarily like program around tech. It's more of like, hey, can we add it into certain parts of our programming to add a benefit to the certain team? Hey, they're more advanced. How can we bring them up a little bit notch, a little bit more? But I'd say we didn't program around it, more used as like a supplement of like, hey, this one little piece, how can you get into it? We actually use tech in a lot of return to play. So I had a lot of ACL athletes as you come across in kind of any athletics world. And I use the force plates to kind of measure when they were getting back to their being able to like push off both feet equally. So I had them jump when they were finally able cleared to jump up until 6 months, a year afterwards. So I was able to see like, hey, and the athletes were able to see that feedback as well, to realize that like, oh yeah, like I'm feeling better and it's like looking better like statistically on a force plate. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I don't know if jealous is a word, but like I see everyone using tech and I'm like, man, like I want like a little bit of that. Like I want some of it, but when you're working with high schoolers, it's almost like, do you really need it?
Yeah, I think that tech's kind of a cool thing. It's like flashy, like it's cool if you can actually use it. And so we have Tendo units, but we only use them for probably like 3, 4 teams out of the 26 or whatever that we use or see, because yeah, when it's like maybe it's not necessary, like the athletes that just need some general, prep and development, the bar speed doesn't matter.
When you were originally learning how to incorporate that, or even just learning tech to begin with, because it's not something that we were taught when we were in school.
Yeah.
Was it overwhelming or just kind of like, oh my gosh, in your face?
Um, Honestly, luckily at Colby, I was in a pretty good situation where my boss, he used it, and so I kind of just was like watching it a bit. And then I slowly didn't even start to use it till this year. So it kind of took me a full year, just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna sit here and absorb all of this. With the force plates, we luckily were like we were like Greg was learning, I was learning, so I ended up kind of just being like, hey, I want to deep dive into this. Then I ended up taking that lead on the force plates. So it kind of was like my own choice of being like, okay, like I really want to focus on this. And even then, it's still taken like the 2 years to be like, okay, now we're getting everyone jumping. How can we actually use the data we're getting? Okay, we can use it for X, maybe Y down the road, maybe Z. So it's been very slow, but I think just picking one piece at a time was like key to like learning it and not just being like, I want to know everything about all of it. It's just like, what's one thing I can take away from this piece of technology and then go from there.
Gotcha. What was one of the, besides the commute, what was one of the hardest challenges of working in a college setting?
I think in a college setting, you deal with so many different personalities and different types of people. So you might be dealing with like a sport coach, that's 30, 40 years your senior. And then you might be working with an athlete that doesn't know what a barbell is. So like being able to be super versatile with your athletes. So, knowing, hey, I might have to teach this athlete how to like literally goblet squat, like knows nothing, doesn't even know, what any equipment is, and I also have athletes on the same maybe exact team that Olympic lift and want to do power cleans, so it's like that learning to be flexible and kind of learning how you can make an environment suitable for like kind of any type of athlete. And then, I have to walk out the door and talk to a sport coach that maybe does or does not know anything about the weight room. And so relating to them, hey, here's what's going on with your team, while also not plowing them with information that they have no idea what that means. So I think being able to know where your boundaries are, saying things in a way that people can understand them. Yeah, I think that's probably a huge struggle, is that there's a huge range of people you're talking to all the time.
Yeah. When you have a team where you have people who've never lifted before and then people who are ready to Olympic lift and all that, how do you personally go about programming for them?
So in general, I keep the program itself for the whole team normally fairly simple. And then I normally, so for team example, I wanted to start to press hang cleans as one of the things, but I started off everyone, with just like a barbell shrug and a high pull. And then some of those more advanced athletes, I was like, all right, you can do a hang clean. You guys are just going to stick with the high pull and we're going to add some weight to it. All right, maybe we're doing like an RDL to high pull, or RDL shrug high pull. I can mix it up a little bit for those beginner athletes. Also, just even like a regular front squat, hey, you can't do a front squat, you're going to do a goblet squat. And so I think just being able to be like in a room, hey, we have this available, you're okay doing this, you're okay doing this. Yeah, like I had a group of 69 athletes, and that was a team that people had never seen a barbell before to people that were Olympic lifting. So it definitely takes a little bit of juggling. And also I think once you learn trust with a team, you're gonna be like, all right, they're gonna listen. Hey, this side of the room, you're doing this. This side of the room, you're doing this. And I try to like pair people up. Hey, you two are learning this together. You're gonna be on a rack together. Hey, you two know what you're doing. You're gonna go be in the corner. I don't need to watch you as much. So kind of learning your sections of the room.
Yeah. What team was that big?
The crew team and the swim team.
Oh wow.
Because
The swim team is that big?
yeah, because both of them they are like male female, but they work out together as one group when they come in the weight room, and so yeah, I think they were like 65 this year, but last year they were both 69, so it was packed.
How big was the weight room?
We have a 20 rack weight room,
Oh, gee,
so
that's
pretty big, but still with almost 70 people, it's like 3 or 4 per rack.
I'm about to say that's still a lot of like I'm logistics nightmare.
Yeah, it's a lot of like, okay, we have a little bit strip of turf and we have cable columns on one side. So kind of how I would program would be like, all right, there's an exercise that involves cable columns, the racks, dumbbells, and the turf. So in theory, they're kind of all cycling through. Is it beautiful? Not at all. But like that's yeah, it's definitely a hard process. There's some times where people are kind of just like, what's going on? But it's part of the fun of it too, I guess, of just like embracing the chaos sometimes.
I was about to say it's just like organized chaos because you
Yeah.
try your best as possible to make the weight room flow. And a lot of like, I don't think coaches in particular like think about weight room flow. And so they're like, we want to do this exercise. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
It's like, that doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm sure with high schoolers, you probably run into the little bit of like stay focused, like A, B, C.
Oh my gosh. Not even. They go ABC, ABC, ABC. And I'm just like, guys, I'm just like, stop, like, stop doing that. And they're like, oh, they'll come up to me and they're like, I'm done. And I'm like, it's been 10 minutes. There's no way that you're done. They're like, I did it all. And I was like, you didn't do it right
There's
then.
yeah, I had a team I worked with that was like same thing, like a male female counterpart. Guy side would super slow, super methodical, put the weight. Female team rushed through it. They're done like 20 minutes early, and I'm like, okay, guys, like there's gotta be in between. Like, guys, let's speed it up a little bit. Girls, like let's add a little weight to the bar. So like it's a little bit of like both. So I feel you.
What is the biggest difference that you see between your like male teams and your female teams? Like, is it a lot of female athletes who have never been in the weight room before who go faster because they don't know how to load how heavy to load the bar, or like what does that look like?
I'd say between male and female, it's actually not a huge difference. It's more sport related. Because I have female teams that loaded up more than the male teams. So I think it's like not. It's more of a sport. My you know basketballs, lacrosses, soccer's a little bit more. They're weight room sports. They've probably maybe seen the weight room before. My squash, tennis crew's like a mixed bag where some of them like are like walk-ons or like haven't seen the weight room. So I'd say it's more sport than gender because some of my female athletes like crush the males and it's awesome.
That's awesome. And it makes sense because there's definitely more teams in sports that generally don't use the weight room and they
Yeah,
don't they not that they don't see how it could benefit them, they just don't really know how to apply it yet. But once you kind of help show them, they're like, now I got it.
exactly. So a lot of it's just like the initial like first few weeks of them being here there, like that's where you really notice the difference. And then by the end of the school year, like that was actually a really cool thing of like being there second year of being like, hey, we've built up this culture onto the second year of like those maybe non-weight room teams you might think of are coming in like super excited for lift and you're like that's awesome, like we've built up this culture of like, hey, like yeah, tennis, squash, man, they've never seen a weight room before, but now they're like we're excited to go to lift, and like that's super cool. It's like be part of that like shift in their culture.
So now that you are kind of moving away from at least college athletics for
Mm-hmm.
a full-time position, what will you be doing at Hawken?
So I'm technically customer support and performance specialist is like my title. So I'm doing kind of like a bunch of different things. I'm doing some like customer support of more of like a higher end of like, hey, my volleyball team jumped on the force plates. Like, what do these metrics mean? Like, how can I use them? What are some things I should be looking out for, volleyball versus my soccer team or whatever. So some of that I'm doing a lot of content creation for them. That's something I've like kind of done on the side for a while. So doing some like I'm making a lot of guides that they send out. So I have a quick start guide of like a how-to benchmarking, a lot of that. I'll be doing some conferences. So be traveling in a few months to Colorado to talk to a high school association actually to talk about the force plates, how can you use it in your setting. So I'll be kind of doing hopping around a bunch of different things, but still like within athletics, just like using the tech in athletics, like we talked about.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think maybe in your free time you can kind of hop back into that powerlifting.
Yeah,
Have you
exactly. I've been trying to go like lift in the morning in a commercial gym. It's been like a little adjustment to go from like lifting college gym, having like access to anything I want to like in the morning, like a normal gym, which is awesome. But
what
like,
gym do you go to down near Biddeford?
I'm going to Impact at
Oh, yep.
the Mills. It's like pretty close to the house, so I go
Yeah.
in the morning and it's not bad.
Have you ever been to Foley's?
I have once. It was a really crowded, and I was like, "Holy shit! I feel like I need to like hold on to my rack because someone might like steal it if I like walk away to like go drink water. So it looks cool, but I've only been there once and I was like, like maybe I'm good. Is that where you go?
So only been there once, and I definitely got like the crowd was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
There's just like a lot going on, and there's so much to like. There's a lot of different equipment, which is cool. But it was just like I felt like if I walked away for 2 seconds, I'd be fighting someone for a rack. So I was like, maybe not.
I recently saw your new PRs, which are very impressive, by the way.
Thank you.
Have you ever actually competed in a powerlifting meet?
Not like an official one. I did like one like sophomore year of college when because uni had a powerlifting club for like
Yep.
a brief sort of time, and I competed in the one we like had there, but it was like like the four girls that were on the powerlifting team that we like competed in, which is like actually pretty cool to like see those of like cross country runner just like picked up powerlifting for a few months to like see where I am now. I would be definitely like maybe that's something I should do in my free time, honestly. Start actually training for a powerlifting meet.
Are you still running, like doing a lot of cross country stuff, or no?
To be honest, no. I would definitely say I've taken that post college runner life to the post college. Like I lift every day, but running is like I do it occasionally now. I have an extra vertebrae in my back, and so actually like all the running, the impact. I think by the end of like college, I'd been like competitively running for like 12 years, and I was like, okay, like I think I'm kind of ready for a break from that. Not that I don't still enjoy it. I just
Yeah.
don't do it all the time now.
An extra vertebrae?
Yeah, I have so basically my sacrum didn't fuse fully, so I have an L6. And then
Gotcha.
on the L6, I have an extra large transverse processes that rubs bone to bone with my hip. So it's a whole little skew of things.
Did you like while you're running in college, did that impact your performance? Like, could you feel that?
Yeah, I definitely feel it. Like there'd be certain like times like when I was like getting back into like the grind of like the mileage, the high mileage, it'd be pretty bad. Like so like my left leg would go like numb because it like pinched my sciatic nerve basically. Definitely felt it, and I kind of learned honestly like lifting and like having like a really strong like core and like other muscle groups besides what you use for running actually helped me. So like now actually when lifting I have like zero back pain at all, like doesn't affect me at all. So like I think it's actually that actually was super helpful.
Yeah. I guess maybe you didn't experience this because of that, but when you stopped or when college was over and there was no more competitive running, did you like find yourself in like a lull or like a I don't know if depression is the right word, but just like what do I do with like my physical being?
Yeah, it definitely was a bit weird. Like I think like I missed the team aspect a lot more than like the running because I was still like in the athletics field. I was still like in a gym all day. I was either lifting or like I was running more like um after college, like in grad school more than I do now. But I definitely like felt that lull of like, oh, like now that I don't like have that like team dynamic and stuff, I definitely felt that. And I don't still miss that. I think that's something I like part of college and I miss is that like team like and you like play on a team now, which is
Yeah.
super cool. But I definitely miss that like part of sports for sure.
Yeah, I went through a weird headspace after graduating because it was just like it was that team aspect, but also I needed a competitive outlet.
Yeah.
I'm not the type of person who can like run races and like have that be my outlet. Like I have to have like I want to be like playing with people like for a
Yeah.
common goal on that type of thing.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. I think that's why I liked that athletic setting because I was still like even if maybe it wasn't me competing, I was still like in that like competitive like zone. And so I think that kind of like filled that void for me. Like I said, I think I didn't go through as much. It was more like I missed the social and like the team aspect, but because I was still in that space, I didn't like feel it as much. I think I would have for sure if I wasn't like engulfed in that space all the time.
Did you ever play games with your teams? Like I purposely play certain games that I want to play because I'm like I need an outlet today, and these kids will play with me.
I did with a few teams, like especially the very beginning of the year is kind of like a little quick icebreaker. As the kind of the year progressed and I like start to know teams, I don't as much. I kind of like use like the beginning time is just like, hey, like, how was your test? Blah blah blah. But there's definitely times like I'd finish like one of like the men's lacrosse lifts, I'd finish it with like a sled pull that was like a competition. So it was like I can kind of incorporate lift into this, and then also make it kind of fun. So I would finish some of like Friday lifts, like all right, like let's go to the weekend, like let's do an arm farm circuit and like a sled race, and like let's make it kind of fun.
That's awesome. Now that like so you're transitioning jobs, when does the Hawkins job really start? Oh, you
Uh
already started.
I started. So I started last Tuesday. So this is I've been there a week, I guess. Yeah.
Where do you see yourselves being there for a while, or where do you see Future Cat going?
Yeah, I definitely see myself being there for a while. It's a company that has like a huge opportunity to grow. And I think coming with a coaching background, it helps me like help them. Like I said, I still want to be involved in coaching. So I think like ideally down the road, I'm working with Hawken and coaching in maybe more of a like equal manner. I'm not sure how that works out because you can't work two full-time jobs at the same time. But I think as much of like, incorporating that tech and, sports, and I think that's becoming more of a like reality in a lot of programs. So I think if I can kind of position myself, to be that person, that's where I'd like to see it go theoretically.
That's awesome. What are you looking forward to most about this new position?
I think like the networking, like because I'm gonna be traveling to so many different places and different conferences and speaking to different people, of kind of like relating of how like I may have used the force plates, how I can help other people, and seeing how they're using different setting, and then just making those connections. Even in like the short time I've been at Hawken or I've been associated with Hawken, I've already met so many like amazing people. Like the Hawkins actually at the NFL Combine this week, so like that's pretty cool. Like being able to like be involved in those circles is just like wow. Like back from when I graduated college to like look where I am now. So definitely like the people I meet, and I think that's why I like coaching and like this field is like the interactive people part of it. So I think that, embracing that within this sector is going to be really cool.
That's very cool. I have two final questions, and both are kind
Okay.
of similar. So, question number one, say you're talking to a almost graduate with exercise science and they want to become a strength coach. What is one piece of advice that you would give them?
I would say get an internship or something like that. Like get your hands dirty. Like go see how it actually is. Because I think that can either like deter people or get people really excited. Because if you're not actually in it, you don't actually know what it's like. I think that's something that like I learned of once I was unsure about the college setting, but once I was in it, I was like, yeah, like this is my shit. So like just get in it.
And then the second question is to a high school athlete that may be listening to this, because I work with a lot of high school athletes. What is one piece of advice you would give them if they are looking to play in college?
I think just like follow something you do because you love it. Like I absolutely loved cross country in high school, and I was like, like I want to keep doing this. And so like just keep working hard at it. And like if you love it, do it because you love it, not because you do the sport. If you hate it, don't do it. Like if you love it, just keep going with it because it'll take you farther than anything else.
Those are very wise words, Kat. So we're gonna wrap the episode up here. I want to thank you, Kat, for hopping on. I know we weren't super close in college, but we were close enough that I felt comfortable asking you to
No,
come on the
thank you for asking me.
podcast.
This has been awesome.
And then everyone else, thank you for listening. Make sure you do the whole leave a 5-star rating and review, share with a friend, and if you are watching or listening to this on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.